The horned fiend coughs, looks at you with the expression of a being that has just had its life saved and says, "No mortal would do this thing that you have done." Zerk says, "If you look down and see the stars, what will you see if you look up?"
I put my hand on the finger and lean on it. And I'm holding on to him.
Yeah.
And I look up.
You see the ground, and it is fast approaching.
What?
And with that, you wake up.
Oh, Daddy.
I opened the wrong class.
If you're like me and have watched countless hours of Dimension 20, you've probably had this thought at least a few dozen times. Brennan Lee Mulligan is a fucking genius. It's a fair thought, and one that is 100% earned by our very good red-headed story weaving boy. Good job, Brennan. You probably don't need me to tell you this, but you're pretty good at this whole thing that we do. It's natural then, if you're like me and are a GM yourself, to ask yourself, how does he do it? Obviously, I can't sit here and claim to have the concrete answer to that, as it lays under about 1,000 layers of varying factors, not the least of which is just raw experience. But there's one thing I've noticed time and again with his GMing that I feel is easily translatable to any GM of any experience level. And more than that, it's a skill that players as well as GMs would be really well off adding to their roleplay repertoire. So come along, take a journey with me, and let's learn the value of understanding what table you're sitting at. Know what table you're sitting at. Stick with me here. I know this sounds like a frustratingly simple self-help phrase, one of those vague aphorisms that usually doesn't mean anything when you inspect it further. But trust me, the ability to understand which players are sitting across from you, their play style, their tendencies, their wants, their strengths, their desires, their needs, their flaws. This is the skill that Brennan Lee Mulligan and other fantastic GMs like him leverage in every single game. And it seems tough to admit. I know, we GMs are very proud and we're often given all the glory, but your players are literally everything. It doesn't matter if you've built the coolest sandbox in the world if your players want narrative-heavy, story-driven campaigns. It doesn't matter if you've constructed the most compelling narrative since The Lord of the Rings or that one fantasy series that'll never be finished. If your players want the complete freedom of a sandbox, it's going to fall as flat as the final season of that fantasy series. It's Game of Thrones. We all know it's Game of Thrones. Both Dimension 20 and Critical Role casts have been playing together for years, and it shows. For instance, if you watch Dimension 20, you can clearly see how well Brennan understands how powerful Lou is in dramatic scenes. So, given this, he often sets Lou up to flex those muscles accordingly, building complex NPCs for him to bounce off of and have dramatic scenes with. A Crown of Candy and Unsleeping City are both excellent examples of this.
I was on a date with Misty Moore to the confetti wedding on Sunday.
Click. Fuck
No,
you.
fuck you. Fuck you.
Go fuck yourself.
All right, you know what? I don't want to do this.
I always knew there was something weird
there
with
was
her, you and her.
nothing.
Telling me you were faithful voice to the city.
I am faithful. I was faithful. I would have continued to be faithful. It wasn't a date. I'm mad. Okay.
Brennan also recognizes that Zach plays the goofball best, and so he never fails to give him that spotlight to shine. If you need an example, just pick like any Ricky scene at random from the Unsleeping City. They're all fantastic. We see him doing this as a player as well in the Ravening War with Zach's character Colin, where Faniel really just hounds him to no end, and the comedic value it can't be overstated.
Sir Colin arrives to check on you.
No! What have you done?
What?
What?
It's about time. So you want to stay here, right? Or
Brennan's stint on Critical Role, however, shows him utilizing this skill the most obviously, I think. Aside from Lou, this table is entirely different from the Dimension 20 cast, both in presentation, sensibilities, and in just general playstyle. Brennan is sitting at a table of actors. So what does he do? He ratchets up the drama and the theatrics to 1 billion. And the result is honestly some of the best D&D I think I've ever seen recorded. So look, I didn't want this video to be some big thing. As I said, it's ultimately a really simple thing, but something that is really easy to miss. I mean, for years, I thought I was a dog shit GM, but that really wasn't the case at all. I was just throwing narrative at sandbox kids. Now I'm out here throwing narrative to theater kids and they lap it up like dogs in the summer sun, baby. All role-playing is collaborative. All of it's storytelling. And if investment in that collaboration isn't there from your players, the whole house of cards falls apart. So if you're struggling to find that necessary investment, consider having a talk with your players, both as a group and individually. What motivates them as players? What drives their characters? And how can you leverage that most effectively? I really can't recommend enough trying this. Take a step back and ask yourself, what table am I sitting at? You may be ending a sentence with a preposition, Tracy Morgan wouldn't approve, but it's worth it for the answers that will come from the conversations that hopefully arise. Maybe who's sitting at the table we could change it to. It's too late. The video's over. Oh, okay. Love you. Bye.